same for you. People always looking at me like she ain't got a clue. Yeah, I'm corny as they come, but I'm pretty deep. Marching at the sound of his tongue, then I hit the knees. I'm unpopular, yeah, I'm unpopular. She's unpopular, yeah, she's unpopular. It's unpopular, yeah, it's unpopular. It's unpopular, it's unpopular.
What up, Unpop? We're jumping right into this one, y'all. Today, I have a special guest who be spitting all the bars. He's a Nigerian American by way of Maryland who has a lot to say about race, love, and religion in his lyrics. His 2021 EP, Black Utopia, addressed conversations like talking white and having dark complexion.
I am super excited to bring on to the Unpopulr airways none other than SheUno. What's up, brother?
Hello. How's it going?
How are you?
Doing good. Excited to be here. Glad to talk and see how things are going and share how things are going as well.
Yeah. I love that. I was trying to think back to the time that I met you, and if I'm not mistaken, it was at a New Year's Eve party, actually. Yeah, like we met New Year's Eve, I think, in DC.
So
He's like,
yeah,
"Oh,
I think
really?"
was it the culture parties? I mean, it was so many coalescing events, I guess, at one point.
I don't know what it was
There was a few
called.
New Year's Eve parties. Culture New Norm used to do New Year's Eve parties, Christian New Year's Eve parties. So I did those 2015, 2016-ish.
That's
Yeah,
how
so
the year I don't remember. I literally have to go back to photos to remember. But the what you just said, culture new norm, that sounds familiar. And I think it was something like that. It was, yeah, some New Year's Eve party. I think we always do me and my friends always do I was even joking about this past New Year's,
yeah.
what happened to the watch nights? What happened to I forgot all the different terms that we have for those. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't see them where I'm at anyway. Not really. In
Yeah.
fact, a lot of churches actually canceled around my way. I think maybe because of the weather or maybe something was going on. I don't know. But there was nothing to do. So we were just, and I don't really party on club like that. So I was just like, all right, where I'm gonna go, what I'm gonna do. And then when we found out about the event, I was just like, oh, there's this Christian party happening in DC. Let's do it. So we went,
Yeah.
and I think and there was another artist that I met for the first time there, and I was just like, oh man, these are some dope, solid artists. Like, I definitely got to add these people to my playlist.
Appreciate it. Yeah, no, I think even more so now too. It's like they don't do anything on New Year's, but I feel like the older I'm getting too, I'm like, good. I don't want to do anything. I just want to sit in the house. But there certainly seems to be a downtick. But the other part too, I mean, and we can talk about that later as well. Christian clubs is like all the rave. So I do think the younger generation is having their own resurgence of what Christian clubs look like. And of course, older people are like, you can't do that. But it seems to be something going on for sure again, which is a good thing. It seems to be. So
yeah, let me tell you, that actually was a passion of mine at one point. Like, I was just like,
oh yeah,
I'm gonna start a Christian club. Like, and I didn't call it a club, but I was like, I want a Christian space where I just
yeah,
had it all laid out.
yeah,
And
yeah,
sometimes I
yeah,
still think about it, at least like a coffee space, right? Like a 24
yeah.
hour space, kind of like, remember, like if you're in college, you have a space where you can go and do work
Hmm.
after hours,
Yeah,
but sometimes you don't want to be in your home, even though you can have a whole house now, a whole apartment, whatever.
yeah,
You just
yeah,
want to be in a different space. So yeah, that was a thing. But yeah, we'll sound like we about to get into that too. But
yeah.
for those who are watching and are seeing you for the first time, I don't know how that could be, but please just share with people a little bit about your passion and why you are named SheUno.
Yeah. So we'll start. So the funny thing, I love to tell the story about my name. So my name, if you're Nigerian, of course, is Oluseun. And my last name starts with an O. So very simply, SheUno became kind of my artist moniker to go by. But I've been Sean, I've been Shun, I've been named a number of things, and my thing growing up was I would never correct people, so it was just like, all right, whatever, whatever. And I think
Yeah.
that's part of it as well, just this journey towards acceptance and identity and taking pride in where you come from. So of course my family is from Nigeria, first generation, born here in the States, but as a kid I just wanted to fit in. I was born in DC, grew up in Prince George's County, Maryland, so it's like I don't want the teacher stuttering at the role. I want to be a normal kid. So I was never correcting people. So I think definitely this journey into young adulthood has been a part as well of tapping into my identity and my name
Mm,
being Shaun, which means thanks be to God. And being
mm,
like, dang, that's deep actually. Like, that has a real foundation to my identity is rooted in my name and me
mm.
growing to learn to accept my name and learning to accept to be different. So a lot we could talk about all of that there, but yeah, so definitely my
Yes.
passion is growing up in this area. A lot of it comes in just being from Maryland, being Nigerian, a lot of those things, but also being exposed to rap music as a kid. I have two older brothers, and I used to steal CDs or tapes initially back in the day
Take it
from
back.
them, and they would share with me music. And I knew back then it was like, man, music shaped what I thought was cool,
Mm,
shaped how I viewed women a lot of times, how I viewed communicating with the world. And then the most impactful
mm,
music were things where it was really telling me about society and what's around me. So I was like, man, I want to be a part of this as well. So that's
mm.
just been the long, winding trajectory of me trying to find my voice as an artist, be an artist in many respects, but also being Nigerian, that means I went to school for quite a long time. So I have went to undergrad and did engineering and two double majored in engineering. I went back and went to business school after. So right now
Man.
working in corporate America as well, but also still pursuing artistry in my growing young adulthood. Not quite ready to let go of that at all. So yeah.
He's like, the title is right here on my forehead. I'm not letting it go. Do I look like a full-on adult to you? No. Well, then I'm not. I love it. I absolutely love it. That's awesome. We're gonna get into the Nigerianness of topics, litany of topics that we can discuss. But I actually want to talk a little bit about your music and speak to the beginning a little bit. Your music speaks to the times, I feel like, or at least they reflect on moments of the times. Have you
Mhm.
always been that kind of an artist? Did you always want to pen those type of conversations, or was it just like you just wanted to let it out? You had something to say.
Yeah, I would say back to kind of my introduction to music, I think, of course, I like, oh, cool, the things that are popular, things that are going on. But a big part of it was the songs that had the biggest impact on me had messages that went with them, and those messages spoke to the time. So it would be it just makes me
Mm,
think of Tupac initially growing up. It's like, man, someone who could rap about keep your head up or Brenda's got a baby. It's like, man, what's he even talking about? As a
mm,
kid, I don't think I knew fully, but even recently watching a documentary on Tupac's life and being like, man, before his big songs,
mhm,
he was speaking to the people about a lot of the things going on. So always lean towards what they would say are more conscious artists that have messages.
mhm,
But I also think the not danger, the tightrope you have to walk, which I'm
mm,
still learning, is you can't just, if you bombard people with messages, there's a subset of people who will be cool with that. And I think I need to be cool that's it might not be the most popular message,
mm,
but there's also a thing about just making music and meeting people where they are, and that's
mhm,
most relatable as well. So trying to
mm,
find the most relatable way to convey impactful messages is the journey I'm on. But short answer is yes. I think I'm always drawn to like, dang, that song had a message. It really resonated with where I am in life right now, or it's just something I could relate to from how I grew up, from things I'm looking forward to, or like, dang, that's a crazy message. I never even thought about life like that.
mhm,
So always related like that, but also realize too, a lot of those artists have quite the dichotomy to them. Tupac is a
Mm.
great example of that, where he would have a song like that. Then the next song would be something completely left field and wild. And you're like, what's he talking about
Mhm.
now? So, not saying I want to go wild like that, of course not, but definitely having the message, but thinking through what are the things that are maybe more surface or palatable as well that can build up that message and get people's attention too. So, trying to navigate that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I feel like I'm trying to navigate the same thing, even with the space, even with this new show, and um what, you know, for me it's not new, but
Yeah.
new for
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
public.
Yeah.
And what do I share? What do I hold back? Because I'm very transparent.
Hmm.
Um, but I've been sharing a lot lately that God's been teaching me, like, you're not that great with boundaries. So like, okay, so then, so where do I, how do I, trying to find that
Yeah.
balance
Yeah.
of how I share the stories that I want to tell, right? Like,
Hmm.
you are
Hmm.
telling stories in what you pin. And so I'm walking that, I always say balance, but yeah, I'm walking that tightrope too. That's a great,
Yeah.
I love that you said it that way. Um talk about white, talking white.
Yeah.
Talking white. What does that mean? I
Hmm.
believe you discuss and address that in Black Utopia, I believe,
Yeah.
which is your EP. So talk about that. Talk about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you encounter this on many fronts, but I guess the most current one is I'm very much in corporate America. So I'm a consultant by day. So my wife will joke with me even too. It's like, oh, you just kind of flip on, hey, how you doing? What's going on? And talking like that. And I was like, it also reminds me of one some folks from my church. I remember at one point, I always dressed a certain way. So whether, I mean, right now, you walk around with the beanie. My wife won't let me. I want to get a ski mask. It's a fashionable one. So it's a ski mask and it had like
Li-
Chanel seats on it. She won't let me get that, but that's a whole nother
Listen,
conversation.
Mrs. Thank you, because we don't need, like, I don't know, but I can only imagine that she was just like, "You're not about to be this black man out here with a ski mask on."
Oh goodness.
You feel me? Like,
Yeah.
one thing
I
always,
really want that mask. I really do. I still, I might
he's like, "I still want it."
I'm gonna sneak it, but we'll figure something out. But
Oh my gosh. Listen,
nonetheless, like, yeah.
don't do it around me because I'm gonna tell on you.
You know, just
I'm
snitching out
telling.
here,
I'm
straight up.
snitching. I'm like, he did it, girl. He did it. He did it.
Oh my gosh. But
But
yeah, that
no, yeah.
no, just thinking like, being very into fashion cues I get from rap and like being in Maryland, we have our own sense of fashion and fashion cues. But I remember I was walking up to somebody and asking them for directions, and one of my friends from church were like, "You were like, excuse me, sir, how may I have directions?" It's like just having that place that I live between these two worlds, growing up very much in academia and going to schools where I'm the only or one of three, one of two black people in my
Mm,
class, in my major,
mm,
in my whole grad school. So operating in those spaces where it's like, man, do I talk to them the way I would talk to my friends? Or do you not expect me to be this well spoken because of
mm,
how I may dress or how I may look? So just really wanted to make a song talking about that conflict that I know a lot of people who have either been college educated or are sitting in corporate spaces. When you open up your mouth, people are like, oh, well, I wasn't expecting you to sound
mhm.
like such. But then it's that question, what does sounding black actually mean?
Yeah.
Because sometimes I joke too. If I hear somebody on the phone, I'm like, yeah, they sound black. But
Yeah, yeah. And then I guess real quick, the last little thing I'll say, when it comes to code switching, or to that extent, what do you feel about this? Um, if in my book, I don't like that professionalism sometimes gets compared with like the African American culture or African American like vernacular.
mhm,
So if I personally don't have a problem with this, I like to check myself the same way I check other people. Like,
yeah.
you know, is it wrong Also for me to not say this. A lot of times, not a lot of times, sometimes I'll say, there's a little white girl inside of me because I'm from Portland, Oregon. I've said things like that based
Yeah.
on like, let me switch it back. Sorry. I've said things like that based on like, it'll be more so in reference to like a song that I really
Uh-huh.
like or a show that I really like. And I'm just like, sorry, love Frasier, love Cheers. It's happening.
Yeah.
Um, does it trump Moesha and Lisa? Never. But it's happening though. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So am I don't want to pick and choose. I don't want to be one of those people. So I'm checking myself like, should I stop saying that? Is that in the same bucket?
No, I think it's
No.
hilarious. I think it's hilarious. It's we're products of our environment in many ways. I think that's funny too. My wife will sit there and watch Frasier, and I'm like, I don't know what's happening. I'm like, yeah, that's a white show. I don't get it, but she
I
likes
love
it.
it.
There's certain shows I love too, where I'm like, hey, this it is what it is. But I think especially us being or acknowledging there's majority culture, which is
Mm,
white, and we exist inside of that. So there are things from majority culture that by default we are byproducts of. But I
mhm.
also, and we can have a whole conversation. So don't let me, I can get triggered. I won't do it. But especially with workplace DEI things and
Mm,
my issue is they like to think diversity starts from not acknowledging the truth of the reality that we're in. The
mm,
reality is there are white things from majority culture that are
yeah,
primarily white. There's nothing
yeah,
wrong with calling it a spade a spade. Of course, what you said was a joke, and I think it's hilarious. But even on the more serious spectrum, there's some things where they don't want us to acknowledge the reality of what things are. But how can you actually change something if you don't first acknowledge what it is? So I think there's a whole kind of uh, passive attempt to deny the facts about what is
mm,
actually going on with race in this country
mm,
and period in the world. And I hate it because if you
yeah,
don't have truth, you can never have freedom on the other side of it.
yeah. I mean, they've been honestly, they're just recycling things that they've been doing for years. They just find new ways to do it. So, but that is not the point and why we're here. But that means you have to come back and we're gonna talk more about that.
Oh,
Um
gladly, gladly. Yeah.
one other is so, still talking, I guess, a little bit about it's not race, but colorism. Um, you also address dark skin, being chocolate, being melanated. And um I guess, yeah, give us a sense a little bit of what it was like growing up for you
Mhm.
as a chocolate man.
Yeah, no, I think there's parts of it too, that come from what I talked about being kinda cultured from, of course, my parents and growing up in a Nigerian household, but what I thought was cool was what was on TV, what was in music videos, and kind of the culture that I picked up on from the area I'm in. And there
Mhm,
was definitely a season when I was in elementary school where it's the light skinned guys and they got the smooth hair and they don't got naps and all this. And I thought that's what was aspirational. They were deemed pretty boys, right? So of course the
mhm,
girls want the pretty boys, and you always kind of have this uh, thing inside of you that causes you to think the grass is greener on the other side or where you are not able to be. So that's where it was kind of aspirational, and I think we have to attack, or I have to attack personally, where did that come from and why?
yeah,
I think some of it is TV and different things that I saw, but then also, yeah, it's kind of this. Uh, movement to the mean, which means you want to be
mm,
the one that sticks out. So to
mm,
be one of the dark skinned kids in class who's like, oh, they call you this, or oh, we taking pictures, all we see is his teeth, or oh, midnight, what's under the bed? And you at first it's like, ah, that don't matter. But I think as a young kid, those jokes start to make you want to just fit in. And I don't think of course, Nigerian, our culture is very strong. But I would say, especially when our parents came over here, it's like they had more important things to do than talk with you
Yeah.
about your feelings or how you
Yeah.
deal with fitting in. So I think a lot of that I kind of just navigated, and I was very passive, shy, looking for acceptance from peers and what's around me. And I think that led to me not accepting that part of myself until
Mm.
later when I start to realize, and I don't know if they say it was what Wesley Snipes, Morris Chestnut, some of these people that brought us back in style. So I think I started
That's
to
funny.
experience that too, where it was like, oh
Not back
dang, all
in
right, the
style.
girls liking it. So it's like
Not
that
back in
was
style.
that was the slow trajectory. But I think there is a very deep seated, I think definitely attributed to racism, definitely also attributed to just a lack of identity and awareness of the beauty and who God made you to be and accepting that, but also the European norm for what beauty standards are, right? So it's like even
Mhm.
you think about slaves that were in the house or in the field, like, oh, you better get out in the field if you dark skin. And it's like the more kind of African features or things seem to lean, the more we attribute that to being undesirable.
Mhm.
And that is a programming received by default until you proactively unprogram that. So I had to be mindful of that and how I looked at myself, but also have to acknowledge, yeah, growing up, I think what I saw was beautiful in the opposite sex as well was what's on music videos, and that's all light skinned girls. So, like, why am
Mhm.
I by
Mhm.
default attracted to girls that are veering closer to white?
Mhm. Mhm.
That's not how we
Mhm.
see it, but that's what's being programmed and presented to us.
Yeah.
And I don't think I was aware of that even until maybe college or so. I was like, dang, well, why am I why am I like this? And it's like, oh no, I've been programmed unknowingly. And if you don't
Yep.
deprogram or acknowledge your programming and begin to see that if your program is not rooted in truth, that it has to be corrected.
Mm.
So yeah, a song like that, and I would love to make more songs like that, just to explore, like, man, this is the journey that I was on personally, the journey I was on and how I viewed myself and how I viewed others around me.
Mhm.
And then the journey and how we see race and color in America among all among all the different races and cultures we have. So this is not even just a black thing. If you hear about
Yeah.
people in India, you hear about some of the things they go through. I said, "Oh, dang!" In
Crazy.
Southeastern Asia and other countries outside of India, you hear about it. Yeah, if you do not just in America, back in Nigeria with people with bleaching creams and all sorts of stuff of that nature, to see the effects of not just slavery but uh, colonization and a lot of these places where the British were, where people are doing horrendous things to their skin to not accept how it is God made them.
Yep.
And I think it's being corrected in a few ways, but I do think the work starts internally with each of us, and then we'll see it reflected in the media and places that we view things and entertainment as well. So
Yeah. Yeah, and if I'm honest, I feel like what I've noticed anyway is that these kind of conversations, even though it can seem like, oh, we talked about this stuff before, like we already know. Like everybody actually does it. Depends on
yeah,
what circles you're in, right?
that's true.
So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, so there's pros and cons of social media, but the cons are that, it's allowed people to have this inside view, right?
Hmm.
To like
Hmm.
all these other subcultures and different things going on kind of all at one time too. And if I'm honest, I noticed that when I'm in spaces that where people are majority of folks maybe didn't do higher education or
Yeah.
their income isn't of a certain bracket, things like that, a lot of these conversations aren't necessarily being had or
Hmm.
it's not getting to them for another 5 years. And I know that sounds like wild and drastic, but that is what I've seen.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so these types of conversations still do need to be had, to
Hmm.
make sure that it reaches everybody that it's supposed to reach. Um and it's so funny. This was not what I intended to talk about, but I do want to say this really well. Tell me, what's your time like? Because I want to respect
Oh,
your
I'm
time.
good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll say this real quick. Since you talked about dating, and first of all, thank you so much for being honest about how you had to ask yourself. And I say this so much to people around me that like you really have to understand your own whys, not so that you can prove it to everybody else, not so that you can, but like for yourself.
Yeah.
Why do I like what I like? So whenever I see these wars, and I think I might have said it a few times on social media, like put my little 2 cents out there, but like if you don't truly dig deep for your understanding of why you like, what your preferences are,
Mm-hmm.
I'll say this for the believer anyway. For the believer, if you don't do that, you will find yourself with someone that you're not supposed to be that you're probably not
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be with.
Mm.
And I think a lot of times the question is like, you know, God's okay with preference, or he's not okay with preference, or it's this and it's that. Have you done the work to say like, why do I like what I like? Okay, God, can you tell me why I like? What am I supposed to like? Are you okay with me liking? Like, really ask those questions. Really
Yeah.
dig
Yeah. Yeah.
deep. Um, because you know, like I said, I wasn't gonna go in this direction, but I'm gonna just do it real quick. I was living in. I wonder if the person, she might watch this. But I was living in the Bay, working in the Bay at the time, and I was going on a hike with a friend, and a guy walked by with a girl. I had missed it. I can't remember. And she was just like, "Did you see that?" And the other person was just like, "Yup." And I was just like, "What? What did I miss?" And they were just like, it was a black dude with an Asian girl or something like that. And it was just
Yeah.
like, oh, okay. And they were just like, yeah, that's like really popular out here in the Bay. I can think of an example, but I like her and I'm not gonna put her out there like that. But yeah, so I was just like, oh yeah, I do see that a lot. I do see that a lot around here. But I feel like that's just honestly that's kind of a West Coast thing in general because it's a little more on the multicultural side here,
Yeah.
in my opinion. Plus, I'm from Oregon, so I see mixed race all the time. It's in my family,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm not saying I'm okay with it. I've definitely had my arguments, but one thing that I had to for myself, I had to come to grips with is what I just said of the why. Like, so I know people in my family who have dated black girls and were dogged by
Yeah.
black
Yeah.
girls
Yeah.
and were treated so wrongly. Now, because I know how people want to respond, not you, but people watching. I'm like, but that, I know, hold on. What I'm saying is that was a scarring. We're getting into the why, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so even though they can acknowledge that, and even though they still might try to date the black, you know what I mean, to continue dating black girls. And I'm saying this as a black girl. So you have to think like I've thought this through as well. Like I'm not just like, oh, it's cool, it's all like no. Um, but I sat out with this person was just like, yo, like what's going on? Like it's kind of disrespectful. Like, what about your own mom? What about, and they were just like, yo, I tried. They not feeling me.
Mm-hmm.
But I do nothing. And this Asian girl came my way.
Yeah.
I'm being myself, and this Hispanic girl accepts it.
Yeah.
I'm da 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 da. And so that's a truth that we have to acknowledge, whether we
Mm-hmm.
like it or not. I'm not saying that's everybody's case because you do have some like we rephrase that. We do have some interesting men who say crazy things,
Yeah.
like just all black women are this and not like there's just these crazy sides of the spectrum, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not speaking to that. I'm not speaking to the things that we've already discussed when it comes to this topic. I'm talking about the ones who are like, yo, I really am trying to date the black girl. I really did try to date. In fact, I proposed to one and she
Mm.
left me hanging.
Yeah.
Now what do I do? Like, do I just keep trying, or do I go where I'm accepted and wanted? What do you
Yeah.
say to that, brother? Like, you know what I'm saying? And I had to be like, you know what? I still want you to be with a black girl, but go forth. Because what can I say to that? What can I
Ah,
say to that? Go forth, my brother. You know what I'm saying? Like, as
this
long as
is
I know you're,
yeah,
anyway.
yeah, yeah. No, this is we were having a debate after church up these alleys, and they put me on a Dr. Umar quota, so
Oh my goodness.
I can't watch too much Dr. Umar. It's not good for me personally. But
Oh,
a lot of things I disagree with him on. Some things I agree with him. A
sure,
lot of things I disagree. A lot of things I agree with as well. So
sure.
take that as you will. However, when it comes to dating and preferences, we were especially talking to some of the sisters in our community, and they were mentioning how, and I don't know, it's different as a guy. I feel like number one, speaking to believers, they were speaking about how believers, the guy is the one that pursues. So they're not out there kind of pursuing different guys. They're waiting for guys to pursue. So they were saying if a guy were to pursue them of a different culture, why would they turn them away? And that some of the past experiences they've had, guys from different cultures, they were speaking about a white guy in general. They were like, oh, he was very straightforward. He didn't play no games. He told me what he wanted, and I felt like it was clear. However, when she was dealing with a black guy, it was like he liked me for 3 to 4 months. He was playing. He tried to keep his options open, but that gets into a lot more around all of that. However, it's like there is something inside of me that does still look sideways, where it's like, well, why wouldn't you go back to somebody black? And I realize as a believer, like God is calling us to marry believers first and foremost, those who are aware of what we acknowledge as the truth. Then we are family on a much deeper level than skin tone. But it still is a consideration for me, and something where I'm like, hey, what's going on here? Like what's I don't get it. Like for me, the culture is a strong point where it makes me ask exactly that, why, and the lived experience of either being rejected in your younger days or maybe even a failed proposal. I'm like,
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
empathize, but it's not good enough. Get over it. You can't say that then you
Mm.
exclude a whole race of people because of the action of one.
Yeah.
No, like that's not it. And then we also ask,
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's this question I was just talking to somebody about too. It's like, man, are we what's happening? How will our culture be preserved
Mm.
a number of years from now if there's this move towards people choosing to marry outside of their race based out of hurt, pain, or hate for themselves?
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's not a healthy thing to pass down to kids. That's not a healthy way to approach marriage, and it really is getting to the heart of that. So if it's truly a natural preference, or maybe God does send you somebody, that's fine. My main issue is if you're doing it out of hate for yourself or
Mhm.
because someone else hurt you, so now you turn your back, or you no longer view your own race as desirable. That's coming from a place rooted
Yeah.
in lies and rooted in something that's not true, that I'm like, nah, I can't get down with that. So I just love the fact that you brought it up, and I think it's such a valid question to ask. Why?
Mhm.
People don't have to answer if they don't want to, but I
You
think it should
don't.
be
But if you are
it
a
should
believer,
be
you probably
asked.
should. If
Yeah,
you're
yeah, yeah.
anyone, you should. But I mean, if you are, a believer and you're trying to be obedient, you probably should. Just
Yeah,
saying.
yeah, 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 yeah,
And
yeah.
it okay, two quick things. I had to ask myself my why too. Because
Mm.
guess what? It wasn't about no matter what your preference is. So when I say ask your why, when you have
Mhm.
your preference, I mean across the board.
Yeah.
I had to ask myself, why do I want a black man so bad? Why do I want black
Mm.
love? I was idolizing it.
Oh,
And that
wow.
ain't cool either.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Because
yeah,
everybody's got relationship goals, power couple, black,
yeah.
da 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 da.
Yeah,
I was idolizing that. I had to
yeah.
let that go. And I was like, all right, God, you know what I like. I just and then sometimes you just genuinely are just not attracted to whatever.
Yes,
Still
yes,
ask
yes.
your why for that. Like, okay, why am
Yeah,
I genuinely just not? Is it because I didn't see it a lot growing up? Da 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 da
yeah,
da da da. Whatever, right?
yeah.
And if that's the answer, sometimes it's basic. Sometimes it doesn't. It isn't that deep. So I'm just
Mhm.
like, okay, Lord, if you don't want me to be with a black man, whatever you have for me, I am
Yeah.
cool. If you bring me this Asian man, I am cool with what I just want him to love you and love me. Like that's
Yeah, yeah,
it,
yeah, 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 yeah,
and a few other conversations happen. But you know, that that's what I mean by like ask your why. Like, even if it's like, oh well, I'm not trying to have interracial relationship, so I'm good. Like,
Yeah,
no, you need to ask yourself too, because you might
yeah.
be passing down some stuff to your kids that you don't need to be passing down.
That's true.
Since you touched on parenting, and then
Yeah.
also speaking of parenting, out of all of, and then we'll move on. Out of all of my insecurities growing up, my skin color actually was not one of them.
Mm.
And that's because my mom was intentional.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember my mom always, and for context for folks, Portland, Oregon, okay? So his nickname is white man's land, literally. Growing up, percentage was like 1 to 5 of black
Mhm.
folks. Like, seriously, low.
Wow. Wow.
I didn't see it like that personally. For people who haven't heard the story before, I didn't see it like that. My neighborhood was black. Kids in my school, black, mixed, different colors,
Oh, wow.
different races, and my church black. I'm always with my family, like, you know what I mean. So I felt like I was around black people all the time until I got
Yeah.
older, and people kind of started showing me and telling me things like, "Oh, I guess it is kind of white around here," you know. But my mom did such a good job of um making sure that I didn't feel any kind of way about my skin color.
Mhm.
And she's African American, married to a Nigerian man who is dark skinned.
Yeah.
And she's very fair.
Mhm.
So I remember when she would always say, like, "Oh, look at that cute little chocolate skin." Oh, and she would kiss on me and stuff. She'd be like, "Oh, that skin is so this and so that." I wish
Mhm.
I remember this distinctly. I wish I had skin like yours. I remember that.
Oh, wow.
So the intentionality behind that, like I said, I got a lot of insecurities growing up, but that was not
Yeah,
one
yeah.
of them.
Yeah,
That was not
yeah.
one of them, and I didn't even think about it till I got older, till these kind of conversations started happening. Like, yeah. So yeah,
That's
the
real, yeah.
parenting is intentional. The who you marry is important. Like, asking the why kind of like
Mhm.
ripples into all of this stuff that we're talking about, low key.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I
So
love that so much too because it's like that question of where do we get these preconceptions, prejudices, view of our self-esteem, where does it come from? You know what I'm saying? And I
mhm,
think, of course, as a believer, God begins to rewire it. But the initial wiring, we are products of our environment. So that's
yep.
family unit, that's neighborhood, that's school, that's where you grow up. So I would say one part too about my preference, and definitely I feel like I would never even, well, no, there was some diversity. I would say having crushes on different races when I was growing up, but there's just so many black people in this part of Maryland, like in where I
Mhm,
grew up as well, where it's like, man, it's just a very black area. Like this is
yeah,
what you see. You become a
yeah.
product of that as well. But also, and this is sidebar, we don't have to go there too, but it's like growing up here you don't realize until you leave that black people being well off, being educated, making a lot of money is not a normal thing. Most of the times when you go to the black neighborhood in a city, you see that it's very run down and impoverished in maybe in the Midwest, in different areas, even certain places outside of here. But in Maryland, where we grew up, it was like, no, you can you have black doctors, lawyers, whatever else going on. And I
Mhm,
think that as well shapes your view of black people outside of just the dating sphere. Just how do you view yourself and what you are able or capable to do? And I think a lot of
mhm,
people uh, noteworthy the fact that they didn't see it and they chose to do it. I know a lot of my friends who are like, "No, ain't nobody
mm,
go to college in my family, ain't nobody do this," and they are the one doing it and carrying that
mhm,
torch for themselves. I'm like, dang, I can't even imagine that. But a
mm,
lot of people
mm,
are doing that. But
mm,
I would say as well, there are these uh, utopias, for lack of a better word, where there's places
mhm.
where black people are excelling, and I think those places should be called out and normalized even more. You know.
Yeah. 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 We're not, like I said, we're not gonna go into that, but I distinctly remember my brother sharing that with me when I first moved to the East Coast. So he made
Mhm.
that very, very abundantly clear. And
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't even have to, because I could see it. But yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, we're talking about dating, since it's a nice little swift from race colorism to dating. um you've talked on social media about, your dating journey a little bit, and being dumped, maybe not once, maybe not twice, maybe a couple times, can you share a little bit about that, and share the Panera Bread story if you don't mind.
Oh man, I my wife was cracking up, or maybe not. She wasn't cracking up. She got sad after hearing all my
Oh.
breakup stories I was recording for social media. But yeah, the song I just put out with one of my friends was all about dating. There's also there's this Christian book that it was called "Kiss Dating Goodbye." Growing up and in youth group, and the book was all about, oh, you need to court people, you shouldn't date, and here's why, and here are my steps. And um, yeah, that guy has since like denounced the book and denounced the faith, but that's a whole nother conversation. But I know for me personally, and I don't know if it was like growing up watching Saved by the Bell or Family Matters and Steve chasing Laura and Fresh Prince and just seeing the Chictionary and all these things. For me, I think I
Mm,
always esteemed
mm.
relationships, or just had a crush on somebody, or was thinking up scenarios in my head of trying to talk to somebody. And it's just been a part of my life. And I think that is that little uh, lover boy or something inside of me.
Yeah,
But
I
and
was
I
just
love
gonna say,
R&B music too. I'm like, we were just listening to R&B last night, some old like Joe and 2000s R&B, which is crazy that that's old now. But yeah, I think I love a good love story, a good love song. So I know for me, growing up, that was always just something that I was drawn to and liking it. So I know when definitely some of my more serious relationships and in college, um, being a believer as well, it's always like date with the intentionality of getting married. So in my head, it was like, oh, of course, I'll get married by 25 will be late. And I was like, oh, well, no, little
crazy,
did I know I had plans.
crazy.
God had other plans completely. So I think I
Yep.
went through definitely in college, realizing that relationships that I couldn't see the other side of, things that I thought would work, that God, if this don't work, what's going to happen to me? I have no idea. And I think God was just taking me on this journey, which I'm still on today, but definitely getting married was a big part of it. But this journey of realizing this thing that I hold so dearly, relationships from the time I was a child, that it's just
Mm,
really a magnifying glass to show that I don't trust God with my life, period.
mm,
And he showed
mm,
me that through a lot of broken relationships that some were good. It's like, oh, I'm a strong believer at this point. God's showing me things about who I should be in
mm,
him. I'm, of course, dating other believers, and you think, okay, of course, this is supposed to work. But no, I mean, people are at different phases in life. I know when I was just getting out of college, that's kind of the Panera Bread story. I was graduating from undergrad. I went to school in Pittsburgh at a school, Carnegie Mellon. So I remember the girl I was dating then, she had moved to this area too. So she was going to be in Baltimore. So I'm like, cool, she's home. I'm home. But the other part about graduating, being Nigerian, my parents are like, what do you think you're doing with your life? Right. So I did engineering. I wasn't going to go to med school. I knew that much. I wasn't going to be an engineer. So I'm like, I got to figure something out. So while I'm trying to figure my life out, the young lady I was dating who was older, she was like, well, I'm trying to get married. What's up? And my parents were just like, are you crazy? So it was just navigating what it meant for me to like come into my
wow.
own as an adult and make some of these decisions. But I knew there was just this one point where it's like either you go to grad school or you choose me. And of course, I went to grad school. And I guess at some point along that trajectory, I remember it was like somebody at
That's
this church she was going to was like, I would have married you. And like, I would marry you in a heartbeat. And she got married to him 6 months later. She got married to that guy. So I was like, oh, well, goodness. But at the time, it was just like, what is going on, God? I had
wow.
invested so much into this relationship. I feel like God really showed me, humbled me through the relationship and all this stuff. And I was like, of course, it's just supposed to work. And he was like, you just don't know. And I
Mm,
just remember being in service and you hear something from the Bible and you take it, all these Psalms, and it's like, yes, God, you know my heart. That means I should hold on. I got to write this letter to her and this will win her back and blah, 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 and do all these things. And realizing, like, yeah, man, God is with you in the midst of your deepest, darkest heartbreak. But what he didn't promise is that every relationship that you think would work or that you're holding on to is the one that is supposed to work. He didn't promise
Mm,
that. He
yeah.
promised he would be with us, and he promised that he knows what's best for us. I know the plans that I have for you. He also promised, like, literally, he will never leave us or forsake us. And he promised that every day of our lives was written for us before we were ever born. The question is, when I'm going through the difficult seasons of some of these breakups, I've been through that one, I've been through another one after that, I've been through a number. Um,
Mm,
when we're going through those difficult seasons, what it really did was force me to say, are these just things I'm reading, thinking that God's going to make what I want to work? Or are these
yep.
things I'm reading from scripture that speak to me about his nature and how his goodness is over him being Lord of every area of my life,
Mm,
especially my dating life?
mm,
And that
mm.
was just a long, drawn out journey. So definitely, yeah, I was thinking I'm gonna get married at 25. Like that was right after college, chasing other girls for like 4 or 5 years in relationships that didn't work. And yeah, didn't get married until 33, 20,
Mm.
yeah, 2021. So yeah, like 33, well behind schedule, according to what I but right on time according to God, So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wow. So, you know, so you can't step foot in another Panera bread.
It was
You
funny.
just
I
starved for
realized
life?
I just posted that video, and then they sent out a lunch order. We were doing a community service project last week, and they were like Panera, and I said, "Oh gosh, I should send them this video." But nah, me and Panera got beef for a number of reasons, but I still ate the salad
Oh,
last
okay.
week, though. Yes.
That's hilarious. That's wild though, because I think sometimes we do we're not gonna do it right now. We're not gonna do this. But this is why it's really important to read your Bible and just have a personal relationship with the Lord. And just, take it in one day at a time, honestly, because I think sometimes we do that, like, oh, this is a sign, this is from God, and da da da, and
Yeah, 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 yeah.
it is just like maybe, but perspective can change how that looks anyway. Like even if it
Mhm,
was for him, like
mhm,
perspective,
mhm.
depending, like paradigm shift can always change what what the answer might mean to your question maybe you had, or
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So just yeah, man, reading our Bibles a little bit more, speaking to myself, preaching to myself right now, getting into my word a lot more this year is important to me, and will help, I think, people who might be watching, who too are going through a little bit of a interesting romantic season is what
Yeah,
we'll go with
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. Do you I want to, get into a little bit of the Nigerianness, um, which is, I don't know why I want to call it that. Like it feels right. But I know the answer, but for those who are watching, did you marry someone Nigerian?
No, no, I did it. And
And
that,
why do you think what influenced that? Or how did you choose your wife?
yeah, no, I would say so definitely initially growing up, I remember I always I even say this quote to my wife. My grandmother used to be like, and this is funny, or because you have a whole project about this, but she would say, marry Akata and suffer. And it was like, oh gosh, like this is
Pause.
the
Pause.
No, it was real.
Pause.
It was real.
Which is okay. I think one, the fact that no one has, it kind of sounds familiar a little bit, but if I'm honest, I don't think I've heard that. I've
Oh,
heard every other ways of hearing, don't
mm,
do this, don't do that, to kata. Like I've heard that, but I
Marry
never heard
Akata
what
and
you just
Safa.
said. One
And
more
that was
time, just repeat that one more time,
no,
please.
marry Akata and Safa. And that's because a few of my
Wow.
uncles have married American women and got divorced,
Mm,
or she's seen certain things. And I mean, from her generation, that's like, they
you
don't
just
play.
blame
And I
it on
mean,
the American.
it was down to even don't bring home no Igbo girl. Like one of my
Yep.
cousins
Yeah.
had a baby with the Igbo girl, and we're Yoruba, and she was
Yeah.
like, no, no, no chi this, no ama this, don't bring no ama around me. Like she was not playing that, but you got to realize, like
Disrespectful.
those generations, they that's where they come from. That's very real to them, for a
Yep.
number of reasons, maybe, But I think for me
Wow.
as well, though. But growing up here,
Mm,
I have older brothers, older cousins, and their things too is they were like, "Nah, we ain't on no Nigerian girls." So I feel like I did inherit that as well. It was maybe out of rebellion that they were on that, but also largely because of just what we were indoctrinated by, I guess a lot by music videos too. And I think that plays into the colorism side of things, plays
mm,
into cultural norms, or even maybe just what you're attracted to. But I think some of that played into it growing up. But then also, I think the other, and this is just a sidebar for Nigerian parents, and I think our generation is now becoming the parents, so it's interesting. But everybody was aunt and uncle. So then, like, you get older, and it's like, "That's my cousin. What you mean?" Like, and it's like, "Oh, we're not
mm,
really blood related, but we are
mm.
related because I've known you for far too long." So it's like they try to set you up that way, but it's like, "No, that's my cousin. What you mean?" So it's just that
Yeah.
weirdness of such a tight knit community where everybody's family, but you're not really I guess you got to draw those lines, but that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, I do think as well, it was just um I don't God doesn't do anything by accident. I don't believe in the whole like, oh, there's just one person floating around. I do believe that there is someone intentionally that God will align you with, that you will marry,
Yep.
or have the choice to marry.
Yep.
So I do
There
believe
we
that.
go. Ooh,
And I
yeah.
think uh especially meeting my wife, it was just like, man, this is a very peaceful direction to move in after I had been pursuing
Mm,
chaotic directions in the past.
I
So
love
just
that.
being able to view her as a peaceful direction to move in, um, and God unpacked that over the course of our initial relationship, where I'm like, man, this is peaceful, and knowing that was teaching me what I wanted in a wife was, the companionship of it, but ultimately someone that you connect with on a godly level first and foremost. So
Yeah.
just seeing that unpack, I do think there was a lot of, I don't know what you call it, that I was working through or would have worked through towards a Nigerian girl, but it was just nothing that I uh, growing up, just I guess either it was what I picked up from my brothers, cousins, and then also everybody else that I viewed as a cousin. It just was never in my purview per se. So that's one
Mm,
half of it, but the other half was definitely when I did meet my wife. Um, I think everything that I had tried was out of my hands, and God
mm.
kind of he threw the perfect alley oop, and I said, "Okay, is that for me?" And he was like, "Okay, if you want that, go and pursue in that direction." And um,
Oh, nice.
never questioned the the package she came. I know she was more adamant with me about pushing colors and things like, are you just looking at me because you think I'm light skinned and blah blah. She don't play that either. So
I know that's right.
it's not a game with her. So
I
I feel
know
like
that's right.
those are things that I still make sure I need to address, and address if it comes up. I mean, from even her talking to me about the people I watch on TV and stuff like that, she's like, "Oh, you just looking at that little light skinned girl." It's like, well, this is funny coming from you, but it's
This
very
is
true as
funny.
well. So she will definitely check me in that regard. But hopefully I answered it. But yeah, I mean, I do think there's definitely a lot of things that I encountered growing up in terms of my grandmother's message, then also my brother's message, the culture's message, kind of PG County's message of how I
Mm,
viewed women, and all of that factored into kind of my preferences being shaped. But I feel like at the end of the day, God's not going to force you to be attracted to somebody. Like I think He sees why
Mm,
He sees who you're attracted to. And I was just
mm.
talking to somebody over the weekend too. Like God's not God is not a mischievous God. He's not gonna be like, you see, I know you like this. Well, here's you don't know nothing about. Let me I'm gonna,
Right.
you're gonna wake up not being attracted to somebody every day. I don't think He's a God of that at all. So I feel like He
Mm,
knows your predispositions. I think it is kind of the journey He'll take you on to make sure those are coming from a healthy place. Because after you get past all the predispositions, then you really see the core of who a person is. And then it's about character. And you can't put preferences all the time on character because there's no way. I'm still, and I think for the rest of my life, we'll be learning who my wife is. And that's a ongoing
yeah.
journey that's far beyond what she looks like on the outside.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's well said. I love that. That's really well said. Do you feel like and then, this will be our last one going out. I have a little game that I sometimes play, but
Yeah.
uh I'm starting to feel some type of way about it. So I don't know if I want to do it or not. If I'm honest, I'm just being real. But as you know, been working on kind of a journey, a quest to learn more about the word Akata that you just brought up.
Yeah.
Um, and it sounds like you've heard of it before, so I don't have to ask you. What does it mean?
So I always attributed it to American, just like from the view, not American in so now sometimes I go on rabbit holes and tangents. So I don't like, here's my punchline. I hate American soccer teams. That's
Mm,
because we view Americans often view America as the pinnacle. But when you come to a world sport such as soccer, I'm like, how dare
mm,
you? How dare you
mm,
think that you all are better than the world when this is the world's game? You better come humbly when you
mm,
step on a soccer field or a football
mm.
field and you think that this is your game. So I just hate all things American soccer. But uh, I think Akata, like, it views it from a negative connotation, which you never we don't see that here, never see that here, but yeah, I don't know if I didn't see it as a loaded or negative
When you
word
say you
where
never see that here, what do you mean? Sorry, just want to make sure I understand.
in terms of anyone in America never views America as second or negative in anything.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay.
Black people may, which I align with as well, where I was like, America ain't as good as y'all think it is. However,
Mm-mm.
there are a lot of very difficult and harsh things happening in a lot of countries that we do have freedoms here that we're afforded. So that's a more loaded topic there too. But yeah, for me, kind of Akata, it really just meant being not being, and even for me growing up here in the States, it was like not being Nigerian enough. Right. So I think I
Mm,
also explore that
yeah.
journey of even one of my friends for 2024, his goal is to learn Yoruba. He's half Yoruba, half Igbo. So he wants to learn both. But I'm like, dang, if I don't learn this language now, it's done with me. My kids ain't gonna pick it up from nowhere. So just thinking through
Yeah.
that. So even when I would, I had some cousins that would come over, or I've been to Nigeria maybe 5, 6 times now too, and it's like I fit in when my mouth is closed, but as soon as you open it, it's like, nah, he ain't. He's not from here, But and you
Yeah.
see my name, you see how dark my skin is, my features, then it's like, well, I'm not from America either. You can quickly pick up on that. So you do kind of feel in that middle spot. So there were times where it's like I don't view myself as a kata because my grandma's like marry them and suffer. So obviously I'm not that. But then there are times definitely amongst other Nigerians when I realized, no, I don't speak the language. I grew up very American in many regards, other than when I come to my house. Um, Even the struggle I had with people pronouncing my name properly, you know what I'm saying? Or even wanting my name to be something else so that I could fit in
Mhm.
when I was younger. I think some of those things, it's this whole journey of like uh, being a kata, but also viewing certain aspects of my Nigerian heritage as negative as a child, and I'm like, man, that's programming on both sides that need to be deprogrammed completely. So it's a very loaded, uh, very loaded space to be stuck in the middle of two worlds, trying to find which one you're supposed to fit in the most, not realizing maybe you're supposed to just be in the middle because we are literally the Venn diagram of so much, you know? So, what does it look like to be on this journey of acceptance that being in the middle is exactly where God put you? And there's a reason for it. But there's
That's
both sides
good.
that we're supposed to learn so much from. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I think for me, I'm still learning, unlearning a lot, reprogramming much of what I kind of grew up with. Um, so yeah, that word it takes me back to a lot of memories for sure. But yeah, I would say even when you brought up the project a few years ago, and we're talking about it, I was like, dang, I don't think I thought about this since I was younger. But it's a very loaded, it's a very loaded thing that represents me because that's how I grew up in many ways, and
Yep.
how I revolve around my cultural affinities, you know. So yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and it's so interesting because I feel like a lot of I think I've heard that definition too. Basically like Americanized is what I hear you saying. Like,
Yeah.
you know, uh and I think I've heard that definition too, but this journey is just been such an interesting one. And I'm gonna reveal my what I believe the definition is pretty soon here.
Okay.
And so y'all just gonna have to stick around
Yeah, 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 yeah.
stick around to see. But I also feel like God has been like, we're gonna go deeper. Like, this
Mm,
is so much more than the word, and even so much more than um bridging the gap between Africans and African Americans. There's so much more he wants to do
yeah.
with this journey that I've been on. So it's an unpopular one, but hey, I'm gonna be obedient, right? So
I love it. I love it.
yeah, man. I just wanna thank you for coming on. I have actually there's one more question I just remembered
Yeah.
that I like to ask. What is actually two. Have you ever actually you already said that you have, so I don't really want to do that. Yeah. Yeah, I'll say, so what is your unpopular claim, moment, or opinion? Have
Hmm.
you ever had an unpopular moment, an unpopular opinion, or an unpopular claim?
Yeah. I'm going in a few different directions. I feel like a big part of my life in school, I'd say all the way through college, was yeah, I just wanted to be popular. So I think by default, I am a people pleasing kind of make sure everybody's smiling and good, people like me person. So very much would be popular by default, but that's just because I'm cool with everybody. So I
Okay.
don't think I took a lot of unpopular stances because I was just like, it is what it is. I'm kind of trying to fit in as many boxes as possible. But
Mm,
I would
mm,
say, yeah, the one thing that I'm not saying I've executed perfectly, but in terms of truly believing that God is real, that sin is not something to be kind of played with or toyed with,
mm,
that God literally sees everything that I do say, everything that I do or say, that I've held that for a very long time. I think since I became aware of who God was, and I had to be at about 5 or so years old, that he's just
mm,
been very real to me throughout. So I think that would lead to unpopular stances around everything people might think. So in college, around why I wouldn't drink, or why I wasn't choosing to have sex before I got married, or why I wasn't choosing to participate in certain things. Not because those things are what makes you holy, but because there's a holy God who you enter into a relationship with by believing in his son. So it's like, man, by default, then some of these things begin to push you onto a straight and narrow path, right? So I think
mm,
for me, the unpopular position is by default where the believer ends up the closer they
Mm,
get to God. So I would say I've experienced that in a
mm,
few ways where it was like, dang, uh, man, you really believe that, don't you? Or man, you're not going to do
mm,
this. Or man, she said you didn't do this, that, or the other. It's like, well, yeah, that's very real to me. So that's kind of my
mm.
uh,
Wow. Love
deep
that.
deep rooted answer. My more shallow answer, I'll give you two. Uh, Avocados and guacamole are trash. So that's unpopular with a lot of people, and I really,
I'm so
you
done.
know, I don't like avocados and I don't like guacamole. My doctor confirmed that maybe I have a natural reaction to them, but that maybe should be what everybody has. But that's one.
I'm so done. I'm
uh,
so done.
I wanted to give
You
a
actually
fashion tip
and
as
you're in good
well.
company with someone. I'll
Really?
share with you. Yeah, yeah.
Good.
I
Yeah. I
love
mean,
avocados.
ugh, I heard it's a good
However,
fat, but yeah, I'm not about that
I
life.
actually know someone who's like, "Don't believe that crap." But I recently stopped eating them because they started to make my stomach hurt.
Oh, there you go.
Just
There
consistently,
you
and I was
go.
just like, "Why?" I would eat them whole. Maybe I was just eating too much, and
Oh
my body
man,
was like,
that
"Stop."
the first time, and I was out of college, and somebody let me try an avocado. I said, "Huh, I wonder what that tastes like." I reacted like, "Whoa!" The consistency. I'm not a consistency guy. Like I just eat food. I enjoy food.
Yep.
My wife says my palate is basic, but I just eat whatever. But I remember the first time I had like
Just got it for you.
raw avocado out of the skin. I said, "Hold on a second, this is not right." Because it does not taste like it looks. That's the problem. So yeah,
My
I don't
first time eating a whole one was that because misconception, I thought it was gonna taste like guac. So I was not pleasantly
yeah,
surprised. I was like, "Oh, oh." But then I was just like, "Wait, I wanna learn how to make this. Let me." I don't know what convinced me to try it again, baby.
yeah, yeah,
That
yeah,
was
yeah,
good. I was, like, eating these every day, a
yeah.
whole one. Sometimes
Uh,
2. I was eating avocados like it wasn't nobody's business.
Apparently they're healthy. They're healthy, yeah. So I mean, I'm all for healthy food choices. I'm
That's
just not a fan
hilarious.
of
That's
avocado.
your
So
unpopular claim. I think that's hilarious.
yeah.
I like both of them. Thank you for giving me the deep seated version and the seed that's inside the avocado too. Sorry, had to do it. Kind of corny like that. Had to do it. But you just said something in your deep seated answer that now I have to ask this question, and I promise this is
Yeah.
the last one.
No, no worries, no worries.
Why did you become a Christian?
Mm, I love that. That's a good question. I would say for me too, like I think I have the kind of quintessential story of being born into. I mean, my old pastor's wife used to joke that I was born and she helped my mom carry me. So she knew my mom when she was pregnant with me. So I was kind of born into the church and church settings. Went to Christian school all the way from
Mhm,
kindergarten.
mhm,
Um, was in private school most of my life. So I would say at like 5, when I just mentioned I was introduced to the gospel the first time at a summer camp where there was just college students putting on this camp we went to for day camp, and I don't know who said what, but at some point it just clicked like, man, God is real. Um,
mm,
and that stuck with me from then. But what I realized when I left my Christian school at like 6th grade, I was very involved in my youth group and things at my church, but I was going to a new school. Nobody knew me. And that was my first time like kids are cussing in the hallway, people doing whatever. And I said, "Oh, goodness. Wow, look at this. What's going on out here?" And I think at that moment, and it's all about identity. And that's what I didn't realize even now, like, man, why we become Christians or not, or our wrestle with Christianity, our wrestle with faith in God is rooted in the journey and quest for identity. So for me,
mm,
identity is confronted at multiple times in life. And those times
mm.
are where our faith is either shattered or it's crystallized. So I know for me, going
Ooh,
into like 7th or 8th grade, I realized I could be
Mm,
two people. And that's what they say.
mm,
A lack of integrity is where integrity is the consistency of being the same throughout. The lack of
mm,
integrity is you're different in different places, I would say. So I could have been one person at
mm,
school and another person at home, another person at church. And that just didn't sit right with me, where I was like, man, either God is real, period, or he's not. And I think
mm,
going into high school and from middle school to high school was like, dang, no, God is real. And if he's real, he's a real all the time, not just when I'm at church and it's everybody is faking the funk that he is. So I think for me,
mm,
that was true encounters with the gospel. But then knowing as I began to read the scriptures more, God was revealing himself to me in a way that I began to understand him more and his character. And I realized he wanted to have a relationship with me. So it wasn't like one moment of like, Saul to Paul, where I just got knocked out a horse or some dramatic in that fashion, but it was a dramatic testimony that from childhood, God was just strategically pulling me in and making me aware of his love that reached out to me first from the course of 5 to where I am now in my mid 30s. Like, man,
mm,
he's doing this for over 30 years, making me aware of his goodness and his grace.
mm,
It's just been a very gradual moment where another thing I wrestled with, I think it was in Purpose Driven Life, but it was just talking about how life, uh, everybody in life is looking for meaning and purpose. And without God, like, where do you arrive at purpose in life?
mm,
Knowing that I always just equate God to the purpose, not meaning I understand everything, that he explains everything to me, nor does he have to. He doesn't owe me anything. But to know for me, the reality of who God was from the time I'm 5 to right now, he always gave me a
whew.
sense of purpose in life, you know?
Ah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That is beautiful, for real. That is really awesome. That's really, really amazing. Oh my goodness. My mind is going in so many different directions, but we already said that that was going to be the last one. So, thank you so much for coming on. Yeah, I definitely want to bring you on again,
Oh,
and
I would love to
I have
anytime.
some other stuff that I want to talk about for real. Like, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my
I
gosh.
would
And
love
then
to.
wait a minute, we might need to make this a panel. We might bring in the missus because because I
Yeah.
want to hear some of her responses to some of the stuff that you said.
Oh, she
That
would
would
be
be really
down for
cool
that.
too.
She'd be down for that. She can fact check me. So yeah.
There we go. Exactly.
No,
No,
this has
for real.
been
Thank
great.
you.
I appreciate it. Yeah, no, this was awesome. I mean, I realize I like running my mouth, but especially when there's topics that are meaningful and things that I didn't even realize I had all these feelings about. But I appreciate you
Yeah.
creating this space, and know that these conversations need to be heard. So no, I really do appreciate it.
No problem at all. Thank you so much, SheUno, for joining me for
Of course.
Unpopular.